channel. Let's get started and find out what's going on with you currently. This is just going to be a collective. So we have facade. What immediately I'm noticing, like a child looking up to an adult who they assume has wisdom. But the facade is maybe, do you see there's no leaves on the trees? There's a real lack of growth on this side. So I think it's important to ask who you're looking up to for advice. And it's interesting because some people sound really confident and some people know a lot about stuff. And I'll hear people talk about certain things and I'm like, they sound like they know what they're really talking about, but then I'll realize, like, for me in my life, that hasn't really helped and I don't know where they're coming from anymore. So I think it's interesting to make sure that you also, like, pay attention to things. Yeah, expansion. For me, this path looks like, you know, I grew up in religion. I realized that's not for me. And then when I was later in life, I kind of went through where I'm not into religion, and then I found spirituality, and I thought that was really cool. And then I realized spirituality wasn't exactly what I thought either. There's a lot of stuff mixed in it, like things were mixed up in religion, you know, like false belief systems, control, things that get you stuck, and a lot of filler. There's a lot of filler in religion and spirituality, and so I had to work my way through these different groups to finally find a place where it's like, I was trying to look for a place where I belonged, I think, like a soul tribe. And I've gotten to the point now where I just want to do what I want to do. I want to do what I enjoy. And then, like, whoever comes in this direction, cool. And whoever doesn't. And I felt like I was trying to cater to so many people and just kind of tiptoe around how they felt. But what I'm really realizing is there's so many people in this world that just don't even think twice about how you feel. It's really odd. Like, they're allowed to have their opinions, but they don't think twice about you. And so I got to the point where I'm going to start giving what I'm getting, you know? So if, like, why am I overthinking and tiptoeing around all these people in my community and my family, you know, friends at the time, coworkers? Well, they're like literally smashing by me, not even aware that I'm, like, you know, that they're brushing by me. That's kind of the conclusion I've come to. Yeah, discovery, self-discovery. Do you see how Spirit's got his hands up, her hands up, its hands up? You know, like, yes, this is what we wanted for you. We wanted you to find your own path. You weren't meant to follow anybody. You're meant to be a leader. And what that looks like is doing things that are for you. Things that you enjoy. Stop trying to, like, compare yourself to other people. Stop trying to make something, like, you know, in the back of my mind, because I don't study tarot like a lot of people do. I use cards and I use my intuition and I just apply my own experiences, and I don't have the traditional sort of spiritual beliefs around, you know, energy clearing and energy cords and all those things. Like, I just don't, and crystals and Reiki, and I just don't believe in all that stuff in the way that is normally believed in. And so I just feel like I don't fit. And then I'm also, I don't fall into religion because I'm like, I just don't believe, like, your Heavenly Father would be someone who would punish you in the ways that it speaks of in the Bible. And it's very controlling. I just learned to recognize very controlling, manipulative manners in these different groups. And then even, yeah, it's weird when you cycle through life and you're just, like, experiencing all these different environments and you just thought they would be different than the last one, but they're all the same. And it's like, realizing, like, I'm the one who's controlling myself. I need to, you know, unbox myself and allow myself to be who I am and how I want to be. And that means being okay with, you know what, I like sitting in my yard quiet. And I know some people might think, oh, she seems kind of old, like, and she sits there by herself. And I used to really think, you know, it would bug me because I feel like people are judging me for doing that and making negative assumptions about me. But I realized they haven't reached that level in life to understand how peaceful it is to do that. And so as long as people are judging me, and they haven't reached that level of growth in reality. Like, because when you've been there, when you've experience certain things, you understand, you have an understanding of life. You have an understanding of like why someone wants to sit in the backyard by themselves, because they understand that they're no longer willing to tolerate or people please the majority of people in society. And so like when you see someone sitting there, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's weird, she's so, she stays by herself, she doesn't have anybody, she doesn't she doesn't have friends and stuff like that. And I think that's weird, but to me, I think it's a flex, because I don't have to rely on anybody. I've been taking care of me this whole time. And I don't feel the need. It's like I can choose. I have choice, which is freedom. It's a level of freedom where you can choose who you want to be around, who you don't. A lot of people are not willing to choose and step away from individuals who are actually not great for them, and they're a supply for these individuals. And I don't want to be a supply anymore. I don't want to be used and abused. So that means stepping out by myself, being by myself. And while at times it definitely seems like it can be too quiet, kind of lonely, it's a transition I've been working on, and it gets better and better as I go. And the thing is, anything takes practice, anything takes time to get used to it. In the beginning, it was like, this, what is going on? Like, my life is so boring, and I felt anxious and weird because I didn't know how to sit in the quiet. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to, and then the idea of like just listening to myself and doing things on my own, and realizing that God is there for guidance, but God isn't going to save me. God's not going to save me. I'm not going to, you can't expect to make all these fuck ups and then expect like someone to come and clean up your mess. That's just not realistic. That's not accountability. It's not responsibility. And a lot of people are expecting God and other people, the government, whoever, like society, to clean up the mess that they made, but they can't look at themselves and see how they're making a mess, right? So spending time by myself has really allowed me to get clarity on what I can and can't control. It's also helped me to really be accountable and like make choices that are best for me. Tell me more. This is you. This is you. Coming from insecurity and renewal. This used to be you. People used to mess with you, and it used to mess with you. This is the red card of safety and security. Now you're more grounded. This used to be you were like any little thing. You're very, this is like feral cat energy, almost like any little thing used to set you off. I feel like you could have been really emotional, but because you had like, this is years of abuse. This is like decades of abuse where you're just like, you know what? Like, I'm so closed off because for me, there were times I'm like, why I spent so much time by myself is because I felt like everybody was out to hurt me. And it's because I couldn't recognize that I was moving towards these individuals, like I was being drawn to them. And so when I finally recognized, it was because I was in such an emotional state, because I was making so many bad choices based on how I was raised. And so limiting belief systems was part of that, and toxic family members. Just because your family doesn't mean they've got your back, and doesn't mean they have good intentions. So I had to work my way through all these assumptions. And then when I stopped looking at my family and I started looking at people that I looked up to, I had to recognize, like, how did they get there? Like, have they ever been where I've been down here? And it didn't feel like those people got there through the means that I would have to. So then I had to stop following them, because it felt like they were, stepping on other people or networking or had other resources outside of like what I had. And so those weren't my mentors either, because I'm like, I'm working from the ground up. I literally am isolating myself and really choosing me, instead of like, just softly choosing some of these people where it's like, well, I got to remain friends with these people because they can get me a job, or I got to remain friends with the community because, I don't want to be totally by myself. And it's like, well, when you're by yourself, you learn a lot and you gain a lot of strength, and then you get rest. The more you can spend time apart, for me, that's where I got a lot of my insight and a lot of my clarity on things. Like, why would I even want to be with those people that I was drawn to before? Why would the people that I was tolerating? And the thing is, like, I didn't even like them, but I just felt like that's the only choice I had. And then it becomes a choice you don't have, because they're feral, and like they're only okay as long as you're willing to squeeze yourself into their box, right? But as long as, if you don't want to do that, if you want to speak your truth and have your opinion and do things your way, they don't like that. So like, that's a problem. Yeah, you've grown a lot of wisdom, and it's like your own light. This is your own project. This is your own path. This is like you yourself and you. And that's all there is to it. I do see, like, this reminds me of like a parent and a child, like a mini me. Maybe you have a mini me, a child. Like I know right now I'm really connecting a lot with my daughter because we just, she's getting to a point where we just have she has a lot of similar interests. Now I'm a garden girl and I like nature. And so when they're younger, I encourage them to step out in nature and how that was helpful. But then she's found her own use for nature and she really enjoys it. And she's into like mushrooms and things like that and herbs and that. And so, well, I'm not interested in mushrooms or herbs. I'm interested in nature. So like we have that common respect for nature, right? So we don't have to have the same, like, you know, I'm not, when she's looking for mushrooms, I'm getting more excited because I'm excited for her, but I really couldn't care less about mushrooms until she informed me how mushrooms are like a underground system to bring plants and the environment things that they need, from what I understand. So it's actually a really cool idea. So I never would have learned that unless she brought it to me, but like attracts like. And we have, you know, while she's still learning some things, so am I, and I have a little bit more experience at times, right? But I find her being more open to information, but then she's also giving me messages and reminders and things like that when I, you know, so it's really interesting because like mother and daughter now I'm seeing where like I would consider like my kids my best friends, and I really didn't try to parent them in that way. I tried to parent them in the way the world works, where so they wouldn't have like such an extreme wake-up call when reality hits. So I really tried to parent them in that way. I don't know that I did, but I think I tried. And so yeah, it's like full circle coming back around. Tell me more about you. King of Wands, a bold leader, power, courage, charm, big picture, overcoming challenges. That's awesome. So this looks like you're stepping into your power. Tell me more about you. Reversed, Ace of Pentacles. So greed, going into debt, bad investment, missed chance, lost opportunity. Oh, there's another card underneath. And the Magician reverse is scattered energy, wasting resources, illusions, and trickery. As you step into this path, be aware of those who are not choosing this path, because that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to target you. They're going to try to play with your energy, and they're going to try to get you to stop. And it's going to be hard because you're going to be aware of, like, I had to really work on my emotions, and anyone who I felt bad for, anything I felt guilty about, those are people that are not for me, because that's how I was raised, was to feel bad for people and give out of guilt. And when you're giving out of guilt, it's still not a free will give. It's manipulation. It's people who play small in order to get other people to give to them. And I actually remember doing this with my son one time. He called me out. He's like, whenever you ask me to help you out in the yard, you kind of like act sad to get me to help you. And I'm like, I do? I'm like, I do. And you know what, I used to do it because I thought it was more playful, but I'm like, you know what, I don't want him to help me because he feels bad for me. I want him to recognize, like, you know what, we're family, and that's what we do, and I'm going to help him when he needs help, and vice versa. Not because he feels sorry for me. I never wanted that sort of, you know. And so I also recognized whenever I had to play small like that, I was in rooms that were not for me, that had predatory energy. And it's interesting because when I was looking for help, it felt like certain people, like, if you look the part, you deserve help, but if you don't, you don't. That's what it felt like. A lot of rooms that I walked into, it felt like, well, you don't look like you need help. You don't look like you're struggling. And it's just like, well, you don't know what I've been through. And a lot of people don't understand the toll that emotional, financial, and mental abuse takes on people. It's not like physical abuse, where if you can see a bruise or a tooth that's been knocked out, or like alcohol abuse or drug abuse, where you can see more physical effects of it. And so unfortunately, what happens is, from my experience, when I've experienced this emotional mental abuse, it really affects my confidence, And then, so it makes you quieter, it makes you smaller, and then that makes you a target for prey. So if you weren't a target already, this can make it worse, right? Which means like more and more rounds of being targeted. So be aware that you're not putting yourself in the position of the predators, and you're not feeling bad for them. We all have resources. We all have ways to empower ourselves, and you've done your work, so you're not required to drag anyone else up behind you. You're not required to give to anybody in the way that you don't want to. Like, we all get to volunteer our time and give our resources as we can. And so I think sometimes people expect things from you because you've tolerated so much and you survived so much and you have so much strength, and so they expect more from you. And I don't think that's a fair take. Like, you're like, if you're in this energy now, like, you're still trying to recover losses when nobody had your back. Nobody had your back. People that had resources didn't have your back. People had a chance to speak up and they didn't. So now that you're gaining momentum, building your resources and your finances, and people are expecting you to turn around and help them when they didn't help you. I give what I receive, and that's how I've learned to in this chapter of life. When I have way more to give, I might think differently, but in this time while I'm still like, it's like a seedling, putting a seedling out in the garden. Like, there's still weather, while you're going to be growing in that and you're getting sunshine and rain, it's still a lot of weathering. And so it's not that's not a sure bet, right? Like, you still have it's not a guarantee. So for me, in this time of growth, I would definitely be protecting myself, and I wouldn't be putting myself in rooms that I didn't need to be in, around people that don't appreciate it. Here's the thing. So it's like, I'm gonna give you an example of my kids. So like, when my kids were living in my house, they weren't careful with things, and they don't really care about cleanliness, and so they have their own places now. But the thing is like, so like, now if they break something of theirs, they have to pay for it, and they can understand the cost of it, right? But when you're around, when you've developed peace within yourself, when you've worked on your emotions, you've worked on your wounding and all those things, and then you want to put yourself around a feral animal human being, like, they're too much of a hurricane energy, and they don't understand what it takes for the work that you put through. And not only just like emotional and mentally, but like financially, you've put a lot of money. Like, you have to pay for the food, the healthy food, it's expensive. You're investing in your health and your wealth and yourself. And like, a lot of people, if they haven't done that work like you have, they're not gonna handle it carefully. They're not gonna, it's like handing someone an egg. And it's like, wow, look, I just found this egg. And like, they don't give a shit about nature. They don't give a shit about birds, and they just drop it. And it's like, no big deal. And you're like, whoa, that was like So it's like the idea of like, treating yourself like the diamond that you are, because a lot of people are still in the coal stages where they haven't refined themselves. And so that rough edge could scratch your refinement that you've built. And it's not to say we don't help those less fortunate than us, but I think it's important to look at what position in life you are and give when you can, and if you can't, don't. And what that means is like recognizing that when you do give, what you're going to give, it's kind of like if somebody's really focuses on junk food over and coffee and stuff like that, you could offer them like a glass of kombucha and like a salad with like a lean piece of chicken, and they're probably going to snuff their nose at it because they like the junk food and the candy, and so like, you can give them this meal, and then behind your back they just throw it in the garbage. You worked hard for that. So to me, in this work is where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm looking at who I give to and how much. I can give a smile, I can give friendliness. I don't have to be rude, but I'm limited. And before, it used to be unconditional. So yeah. And so now I'm limited in how I give, because I know that there are people who take my giving for granted, and they take there's a number of users and abusers out there, a never-ending lineup of that. And so while I'm willing to give unabashedly, like that, there's going to be people that are going to pick that up. So it's just kind of like, I'm learning to really invest more in myself at this time, so I can get myself to a better place, and then I can also be in a better place to give to those who are in need, and not just waste it on those who really couldn't care less. Ten of Cups, inner happiness, family reunions, total love, and support, fulfillment, dreams coming true. Yeah, while you focus on, instead of giving out so much and refocusing your time and attention on you and yours, I think that's, oh, in the bottom, the Lovers, partnership, deep love, balance of two together, union, duality. It's like boundaries. It's like boundaries. You have to have boundaries for other people, but then you also have to have boundaries for yourself, right? You can't just trying to have boundaries with people who have none, and then feeling you keep bringing those people into your group. It's extra work. Why are you putting extra work on your plate? You've already worked. You've already dealt with your karma. When you keep bringing these people into your circle, you know, there's prime realty. These people are too far. If they were to take a jump to meet, they can't meet you where you're at. They would drop because it's a failure, because they haven't done the work. They haven't laid the foundation to get to where you are. So like, it's kind of cruel, like, to be like, hey, come join me, when they know they can't meet you there. You know, it's just a matter of time where these people are going to understand how far and how much you've worked on yourself and how little they have, and then they tend to lash out of frustration and resentment. And so it's more like avoiding that. Okay, so let's find out cards of advice. If you frequently give yourself permission to doodle, wander, and be totally unproductive, and you actually relish such interludes, I can guarantee that your genius, creativity, and productivity will increase exponentially. If you frequently give yourself permission to doodle, wander, and be totally unproductive, and you actually relish such interludes, I can guarantee that your genius, creativity, and productivity will. So for that, what that means for me is like, so previously my system has been overworked, and that means I'm up in my head too much, because I've been, I've had my fair share of attacks from individuals, people coming into my lane. And so instead of focusing on that so much, I find it more helpful when I can try to add more play, and to take me out of that focus and bring me more into a more playful mindset, because then I'm not focused on what these people are doing. I'm not obsessing about it. I'm not like overly protective, closing myself off, which can happen when all you can see is the bullies, right? I got to get myself out there. I got to get myself out in nature. I got to get myself playing with sports, with people who are active like me, active in mind, like a same mindset, because while I'm stagnant, I think that's what's also attracting some of these people, because I'm moving too slow. And when I get stuck in that energy, it's almost like they accumulate, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm feeling for that. Tell me one more. I feel like that's more than one. Yeah, prioritize self-healing right now. Put your needs above others for once. It's time to focus on you. Self-healing takes time and a lot of self-love. Remember, open wounds don't heal into scars overnight. Take the time you need in order to feel happier and healthier within yourself. There is no rush. Okay? And just because something is not happening right now doesn't mean that it will never happen. Divine timing is at play, so be patient and trust the process. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. You know what? There were times when I'd keep trying to like get my channel going and up and running, but I was so tired, and I'm like, and so what I often do is put like a little check out there, and is that like a monitor? Where it's like, I check the wind, so to speak, but an energy check, and I say like, is this happening right now for me? And if I feel like I've got too many distractions, I'm tired, I don't have the energy, my home needs some more attention before I start giving of service. Those are things I look at before I start going, because there's times where I'm like in the energy of the bullying and the abuse. A lot fell to the wayside. So like my home fell apart, my health fell apart, my house was a mess. I wanted to clean. There were days where I just wanted to clean my house, and I'm like, I never want to clean, but it was just something that I needed to give to myself, was the opportunity and time to like give myself a clean environment to enjoy, because I love a clean environment. I was just never able to do it because I was doing so much for everybody else, and I was still in the line of fire, almost like participating in it and making excuses as to why I had to keep these people in my life and why I had to tolerate this. And so when I step away from those individuals and I focus more on me, then I rest and I recover, and I find time to do things that I enjoy, that feel good for me. And while I know that is like a productive energy or activity to clean your house and that. But I just want to do the things that I felt drawn to. You know, and there's things where I just want to be in the garden. And sometimes it's not just working in the garden, but getting things to a place where I can just sit and relax and do absolutely nothing. And that's the space that I'm in kind of right now, where I'm starting to get back up again. And I feel like, yeah, it's just more relaxing. And I got to a point where I wanted to forget about renos, get my house to a place where like I had doors where I needed doors. I put my house kind of back together again. It needs a lot of work, but I'm like, I'm no longer fixing. I'm not a fixer. That's not my passion. That's not my job. I'd rather focus on my passion projects where I can make money and let someone else who loves fixing do that, right? So, or at least the jobs I really like. I just had to get clear with myself. Like, what do I don't mind doing some stuff around the house. I don't mind it, but it got to a point where it was extreme. All the number of projects that need to be done. This house needs a lot of work, and I was like trying to do it myself while trying to start a new career and now trying to make money by myself, while managing the bullies that were, you know, targeting me. Like, it was a lot, and all trying to heal and recover and get clarity. So I had to learn how to put some things down while I was healing, and then as I get back up, now I'm starting to reintroduce things like that slowly into my life. Okay, so let's get oh, it's way over here. A coping skills card. Find yourself in service of others. So Mahatma Gandhi famously said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Research has upheld this as true. People who participate in community service live longer, happier, and healthier lives. Take the time to find a local charity, church, or cause that's important to you. What is the next step to getting involved? Now, you got to be careful with this, because there are times when I'm like, the idea of service made me more exhausted. So you check in with yourself. Like, are you ready to do that? Are you ready to give to other people? And I also know that when I'm not ready to give to other people, I still had some resentment and blame I had to work through from a previous bullying sort of targeting situation, and that I had paused myself in that process. And so I still, there are times where I'm like, I don't want to do anything for anybody. And I realized I was still out of balance with like focusing on the negative of what I experienced from other people. Like, I hadn't fully processed it to the point of seeing it as a blessing, a lesson as a blessing. And I also realized what would I rather do to give of service. And there were things like working out, going rollerblading, you know, just sitting and doing absolutely nothing. So check in with yourself. If you want to give of service, do that. But also make sure, like, if you don't feel like you're up to, then don't. You gotta part of this healing process is understanding when you're taking on too much, because you know how to take on too much. The problem is you don't know how to rest. And it's also giving of service. I had to learn who I was giving to, and like I said, it wasn't the right people. So giving of service doesn't mean enabling people with bad behaviors. It means doing, like, you have a free will. Where does your service go? You don't have to. I feel like there's like there's like these rules, unspoken rules of like, you know, when someone appears like this, we have to help them. But there are some people who really can't help themselves and don't want to. And there are people who are in bad situations because they've been targeted, you know, because they don't know how to do things for themselves. I do think there's like a number of situations, not just one, you know, situation. And some people may not like the sound that you're selective with who you service, but that's when you've been through a number of things. I think that's important. Schedule the pleasurable. Pause for a moment and call to mind all of the activities that you enjoy. These activities can be simple or complex, free or cost money, or those that you do alone or involve others. Make time to do these things and plan out when you will do each one. So for instance, I've got a massage planned next week. I'm teaching myself how to rollerblade, and the first time I went out was this week, and I literally wiped out, like dead dropped twice, and I kept going. And normally I would stop. So I was like, this is okay. And it's super scary when you're up on rollerblades at first, because you feel taller and on wheels. So if you don't have the abs built up quite yet, it can be kind of scary. But I did it, and I made it through it, and I was all right. Okay. Don't be anger's puppet. When anger shows up in our lives, it's easy for us to be its puppet. We overreact, attack others, and lash out. So the next time you feel angry, what would you do differently? Could you give others permission to make mistakes, engage in an act of kindness, or try to see the world from their perspective? See, this is another one. We've got to be careful with this, because I don't agree with that message when I think there's some people that it's a mistake and some people that that's who they are. So if we let bad behavior go and there's a lack of accountability on their side of things, when you have said like this behavior is unacceptable and you don't receive any sort of like accountability or change of behavior, then that's who that person is. So no amount of kindness it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake, it's their behavior. So we got to learn to recognize, is this a mistake, or is this a behavior? Like, is this a way to control, dismiss, diminish, suppress me from another person? Because I know I've gotten, I used to think like that too, where it's like, oh, I feel bad because they're working through stuff, and making that assumption based on somebody who is actually in abusive behavior is a mistake that I made. And so while I continually gave exceptions to these people, I continually was at the hands of abuse. So I'm going to call this self-care out. Engage in an act of kindness, or try to see the world from their perspective. You know what I do? When I put myself in their shoes, I understand that I don't act like that anymore. I don't know that I really did ever act like that to that extreme. Like, it's extreme. So like, I think this is helpful in the way, like, pay attention to how someone's behaving, and if you have never reacted like that, that is maybe not your people. And if you no longer act like that, that is not your people. See what I'm talking about? Like, this is like a facade. This sounds like good advice. This is from a doctor. Pretty sure a doctor wrote this deck. A psychologist. Where's the box? Coping Skills for Trauma by Timothy Gordon, MSW. See, to me, that doesn't sound like good advice. Could you give others permission to make mistakes, engage in the act of kindness, or try to see the world from their perspective? But if they're constantly being abusive to you, why would you keep doing that? That doesn't sound... See, this is the problem I have, because this is also the message that religion gives for forgiveness, that we're supposed to forgive people. But if people are unwilling to see how they're hurting other people, then they're just going to keep doing it. So if you haven't received any sort of remorse, not just regret, but remorse or accountability and an explanation on how they're going to do different moving forward, then to me, I'm protecting myself, and I'm not going to put myself in that line of fire again, because it's just a matter of time when that gun's going to go off again. Sorry for the metaphor, like the explanation, but like this is not, see, that's not, these are supposed to come from therapy. It's one thing to recognize people have mistakes, but if they're not recognizing their own mistakes, that's a problem. I can tell my kids, like, where I micromanage, and I give advice without an invitation, right? And it's challenging because I'm their mom, and so I'm trying to say, like, hey, like, watch out for this, and kind of like a guide. When you're walking on a hike, they're like, hey, watch out for this next cliff, and watch out for this, and watch out for the poison ivy. But if they're getting to an age now where they're not asking for it, so I have to catch myself. And there are times where, like, oh, and they'll remind me that, like, you're doing it again. Okay, so that is very different than somebody lashing out, calling you names, getting a crowd of people against you because they don't like your answer, or that you don't like to spend time with them. That is very different. So be aware of, like, where you're forgiving mistakes and where you're giving kindness and what that looks like, because some of this is feral energy, and some of this is like someone who is trying to grow and is misstepping. There's a difference. Someone who's in denial and delusion and blaming everybody for, like, for all their mistakes, and there's someone who's like, you know what, I'm working on this, I haven't fully got it yet, and I apologize. That's why I tell my kids when I'm like, oh my god, I did it again, and they've been really good. They're like, no, I got it, like, because they can see that I'm trying. They can see the effort. So without effort, a mistake is just something about, it's going to happen again. You know, without the remorse, without the accountability, and without the effort, this is somebody who is comfortable with their mistakes. So be aware of that. Okay, so I'm going to close this off. Hopefully this is helpful, and be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.